Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have with me visionary, inventor, and solutions expert, Alosha Lynov. Now you're going to take a look at the website here, bioveda.co.co. Now I want to give you a quick little background, and of course Alosha can jump in and give his own take on what's going on. Now, inventor and master builder of geometrically inspiring, functionally self-sustaining, and self-regenerative ecotech living habitats. Doing this for 12 years, trying to bring communities together and get this off the ground in terms of usability, functionability, if there is functionality, to be correct on that. The solutions that we need moving forward are right now. There's no waiting any longer for what we're experiencing from the sun, the magnetic poles wandering, coming into what many perceive as a full pole reversal. We see things with the grand solar minimum amplifying exponentially faster than they should be. It's even in question, are we in the grand solar minimum now, or is the magnetic pole movement and the pole shifting having the amplification before the actual grand solar minimums here? But regardless of what's happening, how you want to quantify it, these changes are real, they're here, and we finally have somebody who has cost-effective economic solutions, because as we look around the world, we see $500,000 solutions. That's not doable for most of the population. Let's bring it back down into something that we all can utilize. So Alosha, thanks for coming on. When we talked before we started the interview here, I was really interested in water, food preservation, food storage, and then also ways to grow food faster without having to come and maintain it every single minute. And you seem to have quite a few solutions across the board on all those, plus some ideas that you wanted to talk about. So here we go. Thanks for coming on and sharing some of your ideas with myself. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, David. That was great.
Pleasure.
David, the journey really started with me reading the Anastasia books, which is ringing cedars and getting inspired by the whole community movement of living on the land, living on your 1 hectare. And that was just, ringing in my ears. So I packed up from the city. I was doing my event decor business at a time with stretch spandex for corporate events and banks and insurance companies. And I was doing really well. Really well. We were turning over, I think, $1 million in 2008. So for South Africa, it was fantastic. And leaving all of that behind, we went for the land. And obviously, when speaking to the people, they're all like, yes, we want to live in a community. But when it came to let's buy the land, nobody was ready. So we went and bought the land and started building our own permaculture training center with my ex-wife and my son. And then at one fine morning, my wife and my son got tied up and we had a robbery. People got in with masks and really just tied them up in our mobile home. And that was a big shock for me, because there was living on the land and really trying to get a whole training center off the ground, and then universe just had this bump. And then that coupled with a total bankruptcy, because when you leave the city, the finances from the city that keep you going, they disappear. So obviously my business started to sneeze in the city, and I was left bankrupt, and then having that robbery gave us no choice but to run back to the city. And then one fine morning I heard this bloop bloop, and I saw my downstairs toilet water, and that's how my whole water story got started. The downstairs toilet and bath, the sewage was rising out of the toilet. You see, I'm on a riverfront, so
it's a bad morning.
Yeah, man.
We'll get another cup of coffee.
No, I'll send you some footage. It's horrible. So it started to rise, and I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? I try and phone, the city of Department of Water, and they're like, you're number 5,000 in a queue, 5-hour waiting list. I'm like, no, this is coming up at an inch every minute. So I ran outside, and thanks God the 110 mil pipe was, not hidden in a concrete like in all American houses. I took a sledgehammer, smashed the bastard, and I had poor toilet paper from our entire neighborhood running through my garden for 2 weeks. So why this happens, I'm on a riverfront. So because we're starting to have these massive floods, massive. And I don't know if it's linked with, obviously it is linked with the weather, but the main thing that's happening is they're putting a lot of roofs and a lot of paving all over the city. So where the water used to percolate through the grass and absorb, now it's just hard surface runoff. So the river goes up from 0 to 8 meters in a space of half an hour, and these logs come down and they hit the sewage pipe and it bends. So when the sewage pipe bends, my house being lower than the sewage pipe, basically it all comes up. So I knew it was going to happen again, and I started getting all the outlets, every single outlet on wetlands and biogas digest and more wetlands, every single outlet, shower, bath, kitchen water. And obviously there's different quality of waters, and that's why you treat them separately. But we can, so basically that started my water journey. And then I went on a whole mad plug in my house in South Africa and built storage and underground storage and ferrocement storage, and made it all quite curvy, obviously inspired by ferrocement and Gaudi and nature and curvilinear Zaha Hadid lines. I made everything liquid and organic because it just, that's why I started my Van Dyke or spandex business, just to take out the corners of the rooms and make them into womb-like structures. But that's basically it. I just wanted to give you that little piece.
Yeah, because when you look at nature, nothing's straight lines. I mean, rarely do you find a straight line in nature. Everything follows the paths of least resistance, or the electrical paths within our earth, or wherever it is, right at the ground level. So everything is working on principles of the least flow of resistance. And when it comes into building, and in terms of just being able to get water to move from one place to another, nature doesn't make water go uphill. It drains for a certain reason in a certain place. And you mentioned something really important there about, finding the areas that had the water. So just for you, any of out there prepping or getting ready, how many of you have a map of the local water resources in your area? That being either the streams, the rivers themselves, the catchment basins, or just ponds in general around neighborhoods or something. Have you ever ridden a bike around? Have you ever driven a car around? You have access to these water points, because these are going to be the most important things. Clean water is going to be the thing between life and death moving forward. So, being able to purify and also filter, there's a huge difference between filtering water and purifying water. If you have that skill set alone, people are going to be begging you to come on in. Please, please, please come on over, because we don't know, how to get this water clean. Because once the system goes down, and it could be from a solar flare, it could be from interruptions magnetically, just the way our motors are set up, north-south, if the magnetic pole hits a certain percentage, we don't know if it has to go to absolute zero before the motors stop working on our planet. What if it only drops at 40%, 36%, 30%, and then the motors stop working? We just don't know yet. So having all the water resources, that's one thing I wanted to talk about, and that's why I'm really interested in the water. And you alluded to that in the beginning, so long rant, but keep going.
Clean water. Let's talk about
clean water, clean.
Okay. So it's a really simple solution. It's called a slow sand biochar filter. I've learned it in Thailand. It is in our training. David will be sharing some links with you at the end. But basically, it's 4 blue drums. The first drum has got an upflow toilet bowl valve, which sits at the bottom. So the water enters from the bottom, and it goes through the stones, and then it's got the bowl that floats on top. And that, once it gets to the certain level, the bowl is up and the valve is up, and means no water. And then that water overflows into sand, which you obviously sift through a nice cleaning mesh, so you get all the dirt particles out. So when we're talking about sand, it's clean sand, no dust. And then it goes through 100 liters of sand. So that's I think that's 50 gallons of drum. So half of that is sand. So it goes through the sand, and then it goes to the next drum, which is biochar. And biochar is really, really easy to make. You basically have nuggets of wood about this size. You chop them up on the machine, like super easy. And you've got 2 oil steel drums. And I've got it all in the course, but just in essence is you've got a grill there, and you burn it. You burn from top down. And the second drum is where the gasifying action takes place, and then it's got a simple 4 gallon bucket on top of paint. which acts as a chimney. So you make your own biochar, you crush it, and then you've got little nuggets, about 5 millimeter nuggets. And that you fill also half of that blue drum, the 100 liters of biochar, which is quite a bit. And basically then the fourth drum is super amazing clean water, because the sand takes out a certain size particles, the gravel takes certain size particles, and then the biochar, it's like nano stuff, the E. coli and all that stuff that makes us sick. The biochar knocks it out, and it's not like a little filter that you have in the kitchen. We're talking about 100 liters.
An oil drum, literally.
Yeah, it is.
The size of an oil drum.
Yeah, a full oil drum of biochar. And this biochar filter, I would be lying. I would be over-exaggerating if I said it will cost you $300 to make for the whole thing. And that gives you 300 liters. So we divide it by 4. It's 75, 80 gallons a day of amazing water. So there is an amazing filter which will give you 80 gallons of water a day, every day for 3 years, and then you replace the biochar, which will cost you another $20 to make another batch of biochar. So the solutions we're talking about are robust, simple, and we use recycled drums that they use for glucose. You go to any glucose factory, and glucose obviously is, you wash that stuff out and off you go. So that's just clean water for drinking and bathing. Because when you find those ponds that you're talking about in your local counties, in your cities, you must understand that most of the water is polluted. It's unfortunate.
Oh, definitely.
And that's why it actually got me started on the whole water journey, because I saw this water in the river smelling, because the counties are not able to handle sewage from 1 million homes. So they just, sometimes when it overloads the system, just add chlorine and they dump it back in the river. So if you want to drink the water, you got to make a biochar filter.
Yeah, and think about that too. It's so simple to be able to create that. I mean, you could make that literally from everywhere as long as you have access to sand. I mean, it's not like a super high-tech double filter and a reverse osmosis or something like this to try to remove. That's the solutions that they're offering now. These incredibly high-tech, all relying on electricity, all relying on the grid to be able to power itself. But why don't we go back to the simplest form, using gravity again? Well, it's been lost. I visited Vietnam and took a look at the amount of fish farms that they had over there, but they're not the traditional fish farms that we consider fish farms, where they have all the water moving and the pump and the aeration systems. What they have is floating houses with a bunch of nets drooping under the house, and then they put the fish in there, and everything's natural flow through. So the disease in the amount of fish is very low. It's all being ocean flushed every single minute. So these fish are existing in the nets inside the natural ecosystem, and the farmers are just feeding them. And a lot of times there's so much natural food in the water for them that they eat whatever's floating in and floating by through the seawater. And it's very, very, very low tech with incredibly high output, no antibiotics. And the fish is, people go out there to actually buy the fish from them because it's better than what's coming out of the fish farms that's supposedly so high tech for our new protein source. So we got to start looking back at the easiest solutions, like literally what you understand with this grand solar minimum / magnetic pole reversal that's coupling together for huge effects, runaway right now. We're going to have to go back to a pioneering lifestyle, and it's more something, think about 1850s-ish, pre all the electrical devices we have. I mean, how are you going to get your water out from ground using the wind? So coming back to the base of the most easiest to use, gravity, wind, earth, help us. That's where we need to go with it. Simple solutions.
Well, let's talk a little bit about gravity. So what I've learned in earthships, they build a really high roof, and then from the roof they'll have the water tank. And the beauty about that water tank being above ground and the high roof is that should the pump break, at the bottom of the thing where of the tank, you open the tap to wash your hands. You might not have pressure, but you'll be able to get water out of your tank. And that's one of the problems with having tanks submerged. And we do teach an underground water bunker, because I know in America, your government sometimes does not allow you to build water tanks. So if you want a hidden water tank, I build a 10,000 gallon underground water tank with a house above it, and nobody knows it's there. Or that tank can be used as an underground bunker to store food, or even grow food hydroponically with lamps in case of emergency, for example. But be that as it may, gravity is an amazing way to deliver water, low tech. As I said, it won't have pressure, but if you put it on a tower, when I used to live on a farm, I've put my tank on an 18-foot tower with a solar pump, a little solar pump with one panel, no battery, no inverter, just a panel and pump. That would get the water during the day there, and that would give me, water whenever I need it, and super high pressure. So, that's one of the ways we can get pressures when using the sun to get it up there. So it's very important. Those low-tech solutions are crucial. Just talking about the biochar filter, we costed what would a filter that gives you the same quality, and I had the water tested, the same quality water, what would a filter cost you like that? It came up to $5,000, David. And our filter that we teach is 300 with 4 friends in 3 days. $300 on all the materials, including making your own oven to bake this biochar out of oil drums.
Yeah, now the only thing with me, after the water's filtered, now I've done some smaller filters. Now maybe there's a difference in this, so please, if looking for information. Like if you're out in nature and if you ever go camping, you can make your own filter just with the grass, with the sand, what you're talking about. You can, after you have a fire there, you can make your own thing. But they're usually about using a 2-liter Coke bottle or some kind of empty, disused 2-liter soda bottle. But after you filter that, it's not enough to get rid of the giardia and the other stuff that's in the river there. So you actually have to boil it afterward. But I'm asking, so if with the larger amount of biochar on something like a 50-gallon drum, oil drum, you're telling me that removes everything out of there, even the giardia and all kind of the schists and all these other worms and different thing that's in there, that when it comes out, just on the sheer size of the biochar and the amount of biochar versus a 2-liter Coke bottle for filtering, because 2-liter Coke, you really need to, at the end of filter, you got to purify it, you got to boil it. But you're telling me that the biochar at that scale, that it removes everything where it's drinkable straight out of the drum at the end there.
Yeah, so the difference is when you take some stuff out of the fire, it's got a lot of little particles. The sand is dirty, the stones are dirty, and the coal that you get from the fire is very dirty. So what we do is you clean everything with special.
Yeah, you got to flush it several times. Not like you can use it. Yeah, you got to flush that thing.
Okay, you did flush it. Yeah, then it's just volume. It's just volume. It's we've got 100 liters. Yeah, so we've got about 25 gallons of biochar in volume. Half of those blue drums, they're 50-gallon drums. Half of it is filled with biochar. So the volume really. And I've got test results. I can email you test results. You can just show the water came up 200 times better than tap water, than municipal tap water. And that's my pool water in the middle of the city. My pool water, not some fancy the water tank or anything. It's my pool, open to pollution and all the crap that's floating in the middle of a massive megalopolis. So that pool is 30,000 gallons, treated with a wetland, natural wetland with plants, and then just that pool water through my biochar filter gave me a water quality of 200 times better than tap water. And I have test results. So that was spectacular.
Excellent. Yeah, that's about the integrated solutions too. Having farm fields that are miles from your house, that's not sustainable, because once the food starts to grow there, people are going to come and, obviously harvest it when you're not there. So to have everything that's in an integrated system where you have the water, you have the food. Notice you had a perpetual grow, like a clay vessel that, you're placing the plants around there. So it's all about having more time to do other things as well. If you're going to spend all your time out in the garden and continually try just to get the food in the future to supplement everything that's not going to be available in the just-in-time delivery system in the chain that's soon to be having some difficulties, you got to have a more, easier, like all-encompassing solution where everything's right there. but it all helps facilitate creating more free time, and also the things that you do overlap on top of other things that help keep the entire system integrated and moving. But I really like the way that the food growing was incorporated in there. You talked about flowing out with soapy water to try to grow papyrus and filter it before it headed somewhere else. And what are some other plants that we can use and grow that are food-based plants that can use runoff? And how does that flow of water support everything else in the whole design of it?
So actually, I would like to invite your folk to a complimentary webinar. We actually have a free class on water and community. I've actually just added the community there because it answers a few of your questions. So let's talk about the food. So there's this food growing machine which we teach. It's an hour and a half free class as part of this webinar. But basically it uses those steel drums, with the cage. So that drum has got a steel cage. You see them everywhere in the back of the truck. They're 1,000 liters and they're standard all over the world. And that's the beauty about using these, I call them indigenous materials. Like Mike Reynolds calls the tires indigenous materials. They really are. These drums, anyway, you can find them anywhere. So you make a little a slice, either with a knife or an angle grinder, and then you give it a burn with a gas torch, and then you stick in about 7 centimeter wooden log or piece of pipe, and you pull it out. Like it makes like a strawberry planter, and then you quickly got a wet cloth, so you don't have to wait there for like 10 minutes for that thing to dry, to cool down, and then you got this instant, like a little strawberry planter lip that. And you do those, it's got a worm tower in the center, and that's really cool because you chuck everything in there from your kitchen except citrus, onion, meat or fish. Everything else you throw in there, and then you've got a special pipe at the bottom where you can take out the compost with a worm tea that comes out. But I'm not going to go into detail on that but basically you have organic food grown in a drum, the worms, and then the plants coming out of these holes, and then you've got stuff growing on top. And then on the shady side, you've got these wheatgrass trays, microgreens, which are really awesome. Talking about speed, microgreens. 3 days time, you have little shoots you can already harvest and eat. 7 days, you have sunflower shoots and wheatgrass that long that you can put into the juicer. So if you're talking about speed and shit hitting the fan, you start with microgreens. And if you want to add nutrients to microgreens, you take some Himalayan crystal salt. You dilute it quite a bit into the water. You can get a ratio from the net, and that makes mineral-rich water. But it's not salty. Plants don't like salty things, but it's got that micro dose of minerals. And then you water your wheatgrass and microgreens with this Himalayan rock salt, non-salty but mineralized water, and then all the minerals get absorbed into the plant for your intake, for your salads. But talking about holistic systems, guys, if one family cannot grow, market, sell, package all of their food if they're staying on 3-4 acres, it's impossible. I tried.
It's too much output. Too much output.
That's too much. I'm not a farmer. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a farmer. I'm an inventor and builder. You know what I mean? So for me, it'll take 50 times longer to grow food than a person who's got, I've got green fingers and I love digging in the earth, but I'm not a farmer. So if you can make up a community, and our webinar, the same webinar explains, because the biggest challenge we have is people cannot trust each other and people cannot find a way to cooperate together on the land. People have stupid ideas like starting communities with spiritual beliefs, and they're not stupid, they're all important. But guys, let's get real. Unless we can get on the land and make money on the land so we can build cool theaters, cool communities, cool water systems, cool houses, upkeep our vehicles, unless we can make bucks on the land, I'm sorry, it's over. And we run back to the cities. Everybody's got amazing ideas, but everybody's still in the city. you know what I mean? To get out of the city, we have to answer one question. How can we work together as 50 families or 100 families or 30 families, cooperate together and really have that trust? So, for example, having 100 vehicles between 100 families is not necessary. We could sell all the vehicles, invest into 2 microbuses, which can take a whole community where it needs to be, invest into 5 Jeeps and 5 lightweight off-road vehicles, for example. Then the rest of the 80 vehicles, we have now a fund to invest into a business. It's huge. It's so important. And there's massive research that I've done, because these communities right now are falling apart like flies because they don't have a communal business that they do together. So that's huge. That's important, David. And that's also protection, because when corporation comes and they say they want to evict you or they need this land, when it's one family, boom, that's what happens with a corporation. When it's 300 people, when it's 300 people saying, hey, we do not want a dam here, or, you know, they stand up, then it's a compound effect of multiple families, and it's much harder for corporation to squash something like that, and it almost becomes impossible, especially with smart people that can get media involved and blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? So it's really strength is in numbers. And talking about people coming and picking off your garden when you're not there, again, community, maybe around the households around the central garden space, for example. Here's a drawing, just to show you what I'm talking about. So this is 250 acres. Okay, so that's our resi zone here. That's 1 acre per family. Here they are. You can see there's a little dome and a little home and a little permaculture, little setup. Myself and Paul Richardson did this drawing together. We have our own 2 schools. We have an Earthship hotel. All the roads are on contour. Contour meaning that the roads now become water harvesting earthworks. We have a permaculture training center with aquaculture systems and little islands with aquaculture, like you were saying. We have a eco architecture, eco training center here with empty lots. So when students come, we can actually build them up. We have aquaculture systems, and we have a very important feature called Master Craftsman. Master Craftsman here, like a hobby village, like Lord of the Rings, all covered in earth. The glass blower, the clay maker, the toy maker, the woodworkers. These are where the kids are going to be coming and learning. That's why they're placed quite close to the school. So this is a stable ecosystem. Our own conference center and food forest gardens in geometrical forms. That's a stable ecosystem. This is the ultimate. All of this stuff is little parts of, but we're going towards a stable ecosystem where 70 families can co-create together, and this thing is going to pump out $1.5 million a year. It's a money-making machine, but it's totally made for the planet, for our children. And the reason that we wanted to pump out money is because so our kids can come back to our communities, because the problem right now, kids are looking at their parents with torn clothes, and they're like, you know, and decapitated, falling apart cars. There's hippie, and we all have a hippie in us, you know, we've all come from that era, but the kids are leaving. The kids are going to universities and not coming back to the communities. So we want to make them so cool that our kids come back and say, yes, I'd love to continue what my dad has started, or I'd love to have my own vision within the community. That's where we want to go, because what we have right now, we have cities, we have towns, and we have a lone wolf homestead. This is something in between.
Yeah, because think about an acre, how much you can produce off in an acre. I don't know if any of you out there watch Curtis Stone, what he does inside just a backyard in a regular urban home in a suburban neighborhood. I mean, he's pulling hundreds of thousands of dollars out of this little space, and it's not even a full acre. So you're talking about multiple acres, 70 plus acres. I mean, just the amount of agriculture that would come out of there would be enough to supply restaurants, parts of the city, supermarkets, if they're not buying the 5,000-mile deliverables from another country grown out of season. And again, keeping all these skills that we need, once you get that rollover for enough families, these are kind of things that are talked about as solutions looking back in the past, but also looking forward to see, as our traditional systems that are going to start to break down globally, and they won't be back for generations. So it's going to be an ever, morphing and changing, moving kind of society that we're going to get into. But these cities that we're in just are not going to be sustainable in the future. Probably by, and I'm going to make a bold call here and say by 2025 to 2026, cities will be emptying out routinely, where there'll be skeletal structures just because our economies won't function correctly as people spend more on food, the unavailability of food in a lot of places, just driving food costs, doubling and tripling, pulling out of the greater economy. There's going to need to be far different solutions than we've ever thought of. And, these skill sets of blacksmithing and woodworking, having all this, and then they add on top, you need some medical out there, some medical facilities. Once you reach that certain amount of people to encapsulate and keep a community running, that's really kind of the base rate is what you're looking at from all the studies I've done, and what I've been told is between, like you said, 250 to 300. And then that's not the only one. Then there would be another one a few miles away, and then another one a few miles away, and another one a few miles away.
And it's important.
We're going to go back more homesteading style again in the very near future here. You got to brace for that and get ready, ideally wise as well.
Yeah, and the sooner you start, really, because when shit hits the fan, unfortunately, nothing is available. Right now,
nothing will be. It'll all be gone, and it won't be available. At that point, you either prep now and get ready, or you're completely unready.
So talking about prepping, would get a few of these steel cage drums, which can be used for even just a quick harvesting of water. Because just remember to paint those drums black, because they're white.
Yeah, I don't want the algae growing in there too.
Yeah, the algae. Yeah, of course. Thanks, David. And get a couple of solar panels. People all want to know, what do I invest in? Definitely start investing into knowledge, and that's what our training is all about.
And for more information on what Alosha is offering in the Veda courses and sustainable economics, the link's in the description box below. Just click and go. The Adapt 2030 link is there. So you can explore more about Biotecture and how this can be used in the transition into the Grand Solar Minimum for self-sufficiency.